Hi everyone, Danny here. Today I'll be talking about various ways to train the hamstring to enhance its function and reduce the risk of injuries. Exercises that I'll introduce can be performed without using heavy weights. Let's get started. Hamstrings are located at the back of the thigh. It is a biarticular muscle, meaning it runs through two joints, the hip and knee. Hamstrings help to extend the hip and flex the knee. Most of the time, it is in quasi-isometric contraction. What does it mean? Let's take a look at this running phase picture. The last two in particular over here. Over here, the hip is flexed, so the upper portion of the hamstring is lengthening because it is a hip extensor. So when the hip is flexed, the hamstring will lengthen. And the knee is also flexed. So this portion of the hamstring is shortening because hamstring is a hip flexor, right? So that's why when the knee is flexed, the hamstring is shortened. So over here is lengthening, over here is shortening. Over here, the hip is extending, so the upper portion of the hamstring is shortening. And over here, the knee is also extending, so the hamstring will be lengthening. All right. So in these two pictures, the hamstring is shortening and lengthening at the same time to produce the two movements. It's as if there's no change in the muscle length, although force is generated. Hence the term quasi-isometric. Let's now take a look at some exercises to strengthen the hamstring. I will be introducing these four exercises: Nordic hamstring curl, single leg Roman chair hold, alternating stiff leg hip thrust, and maximum sprint. Pretty sure most of you are familiar with the Nordic curl exercise. During this exercise, the upper hamstring helps to maintain a neutral hip position while resisting a knee extension, while the lower hamstring resists the knee extension. It's usually performed as an eccentric exercise unless the person doing it has very strong hamstrings, whereby they are also able to get back up by contracting the hamstring muscles concentrically. Otherwise, most of the time, people performing this exercise will have to perform a push-up to get themselves back up. One problem with this exercise is that most people are not strong enough to control the movement beyond 120-degree knee angle. Let's take a look at here. 90 degree, 120 degree, and he pretty much go into a free fall. Right? I exaggerated this portion a little bit, so I slowed the video down a little more to show how this exercise should be done. You actually want to be able to go down as slow as possible, right? Ideally, you want to be able to control the movement and only have your hands touch the ground after 5 seconds or longer, and to be able to control the movement even when the knee is near to a full extension. Take a look. In this slow movement, he doesn't move the arm at all, right? So the hamstring really have to work all the way to the end. While in this fast video, he started to move his arms once the knee gets past the 120-degree angle, because he was going on a free fall. And the moment he extends his arms, the loading on the hamstring start decreasing, because the hand will touch the ground much earlier. So why did I say that we should try to work to the near to full extension? Let's take a look at this again. Over here, hamstrings don't or hardly get injured at this knee angle. So during the start of the Nordic curl, we are pretty much at this knee angle. Most of the time, hamstrings get injured when the knee is at or near to full knee extension, which is pretty much down here. So when you're sprinting or running and you hurt your hamstring, it's usually at this knee angle, at this position, during the terminal swing phase or during the initial foot contact phase. All right. So we want to make sure to be able to train the hamstrings at the most vulnerable position. Right. So how can we do that if we are doing the Nordic curl exercise? So if you are not strong enough to control the Nordic curl movement through the full range of movement, I recommend performing the assisted version by using a resistance band to help reduce the load on the hamstring, just like how it's shown in this video. So in this way, you will be able to control the movement better and allows the hamstring to be in tension all the way to the knee is fully extended. Right. And because the load is reduced, you can also contract the hamstring concentrically. So in this way, you can train both the eccentric and the concentric phase. Here's a progression guide for performing the Nordic hamstring curl. It's based on the research by Patterson and colleagues. So when you're performing the exercise, make sure to perform the lowering phase or eccentric phase as slow as possible. And it's best to start off with a stronger resistance band if required, and progress from there. Next exercise is the single leg Roman chair hold. One of the theory behind how people get hamstring injury is because the hamstring are not able to sustain an isometric contraction during the terminal swing and initial contact phase when running to absorb the impact force, leading the hamstring to perform an eccentric contraction to absorb the impact force. So if the impact force is too great and the eccentric contraction of the hamstring is not strong enough to absorb the impact force, that's when hamstring gets injured. So that's one of the theory behind the hamstring injury during running. All right. Therefore, it is recommended to also perform isometric hamstring exercises at the most vulnerable position. This exercise is performed at a full hip and knee extension position. The hamstrings are required to contract isometrically so that the hip and knee joint can maintain stationary. Here's the progression guide for this exercise. It's based on the research by McDonald and colleagues. The researchers recommended to perform row movement with the arms from week 3 onwards, but you can perform other arm movement as well, depending on your own requirement. For example, my athlete in the video was performing anterior raise with a dumbbell. The whole idea is to increase loading and perturbation to further stress the hamstring while it's maintaining an isometric contraction. Right. Next, let's look at the alternating stiff leg hip thrust. The hamstrings are first required to perform concentric contraction to help propel the hip up. Then the hamstrings of the other leg are required to perform isometric contraction to stop the movement for a split second at the extended hip position. The movement is actually similar to running, but the direction of loading is different. So if you actually tilt your screen 90 degree, you can see that this movement is quite similar to running, the running gait movement. One of the advantage of this exercise is you actually train triphasic contraction of the muscle. That means the concentric phase, the eccentric phase, as well as the isometric phase, right? And the movement is actually, like I said, similar to running. So this is the progression guide for this exercise. There's currently no research on this exercise yet. So the progression guide is based on how I prescribe to some of my athletes. Make sure to catch, make sure that the catch occurs at the full hip extension position. And for the setup, you probably want to have a bench and maybe a plyometric box like what was shown in the video. Or you can, if you're at home, choose a bed and maybe a chair of similar height. And the upper body portion should be supported at the upper back, just right below the shoulder blades. Right. So once you propel, you thrust the other leg out and catch at position where the hip is fully extended. And during the catch, or rather during the whole exercise, you actually want the knee to be at about 120 to 140 degree angle. Again, the reason for this is because that is pretty much near to the most vulnerable position. And if you're able to strengthen the hamstring at this position, it should theoretically help to reduce your risk of getting injured. So next we shall look at maximum sprint, right? This is the most sport-specific training method for the hamstring, because ultimately you need to train the hamstring to contract at high velocity that is relevant to the sport, right? And one of the primary function of the hamstring is to actually decelerate the hip flexion, the hip flexion and the knee extension movement so that you don't get injured. So the hamstring actually has to be able to absorb a high a movement of high velocity. So sprint training will help to train the hamstring to do that. Here's the progression guide based on the research by Freeman and colleagues. For those who have not been performing fast running, I would recommend to perform 1 extra week of striding at about 80% of maximum velocity before embarking on the first week of this guide. And also to perform any of the other 3 exercises first to strengthen the hamstring, as sprint training induces much higher load to the muscles than any of the other exercises. I've come to the end of today's session. So if you have any questions, you can message me at my Twitter account. Thank you for watching. I hope that this video will help you to improve your hamstring function. Thank you.